I think we've been working with the DLD folks from super early days, and it's exciting to see what it has become. So my name is Zack Weisfeld, and I run a group called Microsoft for Startups. It's the startup activities at Microsoft globally. And what I wanted to talk about this morning is very relevant, I believe, to what DLD in Tel Aviv stands for. And it's a collaboration between multinationals, between large corporations, almost any size of corporation, and startups, which we believe is super critical in order to be successful in this new era, right? If you're not open for innovation, not open to work with startups, you know, the challenge of how do you grow, even as a large corporation, we found it as a challenge, and we believe that we built a pretty good recipe to work with startups. I'm going to share some of these learnings with you. So first of all, many of you, I think there are about 5,000 delegates or 5,000 people outside of Israel that came to DLD. And part of the reason people come to DLD because here in Tel Aviv, because Israel is booming. The Israel high-tech industry is booming. Startups are very successful here. It's something that we as Israelis, I can tell you that I'm in this role for almost 7 years now. And when I started the role, I was actually thinking we're cheating. Israel is not as good as we tell it is. But it's good, it's amazing. And when I see it, and I go around the world, I see what we're building here. It's some really, really amazing companies are coming out of here. So Israel is booming. If you look at the stats, it's only second or third to outside of the US. London, in the last Compass report, so the Startup Genome Project, London is higher than Tel Aviv, and I think Beijing in the last one went up as well. So Israel is very strong. About 5,000 startups in Israel, about 1,400 new startups a year. It's the largest on NASDAQ outside of the US and China. So I don't need to tell you the story. You all came here because Israel is booming from a startup perspective. On the other hand, Israel is booming from a multinational engagement. Super hard for us to compete in Israel for talent. Super hard. 300 multinational R&D centers here. Some of them are obvious. So, you know, Intel, it was the first R&D center outside the US in the early days. IBM, the same. Microsoft, the same. It was the first R&D center we built outside of the US, here, back in '91. But some may not be as obvious. GM is doing some amazing work in Israel. You look at HSBC, you look at Merck, you look at Shell, you look at companies you may ask, what are they looking in Israel? You know, we don't have an oil industry. We don't have an automotive industry. But we have a great technologies, a lot of people that think the right way to drive innovation. So almost every major multinational is out here. And there's a reason they're here. And again, not because there's plenty of talent. There's actually lack of talent in Israel. It's because of the innovation. It's because of the innovation cycles. And one of the big challenges that we were facing, and I believe many other corporations, some of them on this list, and some are talking to us, figuring out how to get into this market, are challenged with how do they engage with startups. It is not an easy task. Startups smell bullshit from far away. If you try to sell them something, they're not interested in buying. They want to figure out what's good for them. The entrepreneurs want to build a big company, they want to be successful, they want to exit one day, they want to change the world. So you need to figure out a way of engaging with these startups, and again, it's not an easy task. So one of the things to look at the differences between the Israeli culture and some of our corporate cultures, the multinational corporate cultures, they're very, very different. So many of you, you know, they talked earlier about what chutzpah means and what is chutzpah, and many of you probably heard about chutzpah. Israeli entrepreneurs and Israelis generally are chutzpanim, we call it. We're not easy to work with, right? We, as I said earlier, we call bullshit when we see it. And believe me, my managers throughout the years, especially the ones in the US, haven't had an easy time. I see Moshe here in the back has been my manager. It was never an easy time it's not an easy thing to manage Israelis because of that culture. So we move quickly, we're brutally honest. So you'll find an Israeli entrepreneur telling a CEO or an Israeli developer, which is 5 levels below a CEO, tell the CEO he thinks the company is doing the wrong thing, is going in the wrong direction. So you need to be able to work with that kind of culture. We access our personal networks. It's super critical for us to feel part of the family. We hug each other pretty often. and we love building lasting relationships. Very, very different, and some of the multinationals are active here or working differently in their source countries. For us in corporates, big corporates, we're much slower, right? We're thinking and planning things ahead. Israelis are not always as great as planning for the long term. So we're slow and we're steady. Corporates are very politically correct. Israelis are not politically correct. Again, we say it the way it is. We reserve our networks to very close relationships and close friends. And we like building business contacts for long run. But these lines are blurring, right? There's no other way to deal with this new era of disruption without dealing with the blurriness between these two kind of cultures. And what we invite always people that come to Israel and want to build an R&D center, want to build a connection with this ecosystem, is to understand, acknowledge these differences, and work across them. Because there's just no other way of being successful here without acknowledging that. So some of the cultures even harder, right? I see some Japanese in the audience, right? People from China in the audience, people from India in the audience. Sometimes it's not as easy and obvious to connect these two. But definitely we see the lines are blurring. So I want to tell you a little bit about our experience, what we've done in order to connect this very unique startup ecosystem and Microsoft. So so I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, also a corporate entrepreneur. This is my third time at Microsoft. Whatever reason, Moshe and the company has accepted me back, and Yoram that's out there speaking at their Microsoft booth. And the one thing so I joined about 6.5 years ago, or about 7 years ago, with one purpose, is connecting Microsoft back to startup ecosystem. And we wanted to start here in Israel and see how can we make that connection work. And Microsoft has done really, really well in the enterprise space, but again, with startups, we haven't done that well in the last, 10 years or so. So the one thing we decided to do is to start a startup accelerator about 5 years ago, a little bit over 5 years ago. And we've decided to do it here in Israel. Most of the people, some of them here in this audience, said, Zack, you're nuts. It doesn't make sense. I have a good friend, Yaniv Golan, some of you know him from Lul Ventures, told me two things. He said, one, not a single entrepreneur in his right mind would want to join, he's a VC, I didn't say that. Not a single entrepreneur in his right mind would join a Microsoft Accelerator. And the second thing is, I'm not going to invest in any one of them that's going to go to Microsoft Accelerator, because you're going to kill them. You're going to take your corporate culture and you're going to change them. And you're going to take all the energy out of them. Yaniv was nice enough after our second demo day to write a post on Facebook saying he's looking for a hat to eat one, because he was wrong. But the idea was building a program that is built in a corporate, but is very, very different from a culture perspective. It's all about giving. It's all about them. It's not about us. It's first about the value that we can create for startups and entrepreneurs, and only second, the value that comes to us. We're a big ship. It will take us a little while. It's okay. Startups don't have the time. You need to help them early and in a big way, and you're going to gain. You're going to get every possible opportunity to make good on that. So we started out 5 years ago here in Tel Aviv. We now run 7 accelerators around the world. Beijing, Shanghai, Bangalore, London, Berlin, Tel Aviv, and Seattle. And we're probably going to add 2 more this year. And you'd say, yeah, so what? So you're doing an accelerator. Does it work or doesn't it work? So we believe it actually works pretty well. So in a very short period of time, from when people told us you're not relevant, this is not going to work, this is not for Microsoft to do it, corporates don't know how to do this work, in a fairly short period of time we became, so for the last 5 years we were awarded the number one, the most admired accelerator program in China out of 5,000 programs. Fortune named us the number one ecosystem builder in India. And in Israel, we've been perceived as the number one accelerator program. So it took the right kind of work, which we're going to talk about, what are the recipe for that work, but it actually works. And does it really work for the entrepreneurs? So we believe it works really well. See some of our graduates here in the room as well. So we had 647 companies went through the program so far. They raised a little bit over $3 billion. 83% of them are funded. Actually, this number is outdated. 48 exits, 3 IPOs, which an average of $5 million per startup. So for an accelerator program, this is only second to Y Combinator, or maybe a couple of the Techstars locations. But no one believed that a corporate can do this work. So I'm telling all of you here, how many here are from corporates? How many are startups here? Great. This connection can work. It can work extremely well. Corporate has lots to give to startups, but again, you need to do it with the right level of energy, with the right purpose in mind. So what are the lessons we've learned through building this program? First of all, you can teach an old dog, a corporate like us and other corporates, new tricks. Not easy at all. Because many of you know about the NIH approach. It's not invented here, we're not interested, right? You can. It takes some ballsy Israelis that don't care about hearing no and doing what they want to do, but you really need, and you can change the corporate culture in that perspective. We also were lucky that 2 years down the road, Satya Nadella became our CEO, and with this growth mindset approach, helped us change the culture of this company and be much more open to accept what comes from the outside. The second thing is hire the right people for these kind of activities. I don't know, but like people I hire, not me, the people that we hire for this kind of work. We tend to take great people from our corporates to do these kind of works. Guess what? They don't always gel that well with startups. We tend to take super smart MBA graduates that are looking for a job and really wanting to do a startup thing and put them ahead of running an accelerator program, whatever. Usually, again, some cases it works, usually it doesn't work that well. You need to bring people with the right experience. What we found out is the right DNA is usually a person, when you start talking to, the first thing he tells me is, I don't want to work for Microsoft. Great. It's a good start. My experience, at least, was finding an entrepreneur, someone that has been there, has walked that steps, have built a startup, raised money, hired, fired, went through the whole process, and willing to give back, willing to do a lot for the ecosystem they live in. Do good. Super critical. It's not about us. At least not the beginning. It's not about us, it's about them. It's about the entrepreneurs. You'll do good for them, it's going to pay back significantly. So do good, think about doing good, think about giving back. Super critical. Invest for the long run. Startups takes time. Part of the reason that many accelerator programs are failing because they can't fund their first 7 years. It's a long journey. And you need to be able to fund that journey. And if you're just a kind of a hobby project because there's some end of a year budget, not going to work. It needs to be something that the executives in the company are willing to invest for long run. Treat startups like your most valued assets. They will become your most valued assets. They may not look like it day one, but they will. At least the good ones. So treat them this way. Learn constantly and change constantly. Our program has changed every few months. We've changed things. What worked, we kept. What didn't work, we threw out. It's a very different program today where we started. We started with a super early stage program. Now we're at later stage. We're at Series A. Accelerate is not the right word for what we do, but we're a later stage acceleration program. So it's possible many of you here that works for large corporations can do that change, connect to the right DNA. Look at Israel as a place to start a lot of these activities. It's going to help you because this is a much more condensed ecosystem and you can make these things happen. Reach out to everyone you can to help you with this. I'll be more than happy, Zack W, Z-A-C-K-W at Microsoft.com, to advise and to help with any of these programs. And the next thing, there's a big booth next door, the Microsoft booth. Come and listen to stuff that we have to say. I think you'll find it pretty interesting and helpful. So thank you very much for listening. Keep on enjoying DLD. Thank you, the DLD folks.
Thank you for supporting DLG.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's great.
Say it's only a paper moon hanging over a cardboard sea.